hole locked down.
Bullseye.
About a week ago, we made the first episode in a series where we talk about the specialist characters from Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4, talk about the backstory behind them to kind of get a better idea of what the story is going to be going into Black Ops 4. Last week, we started with Ruin, and the response from you guys was really overwhelming. It seemed like a lot of you really wanted to see the series continue, and I really do appreciate that. So what I would love to see on this video is, let's see if we can get this video over 1,000 likes. It's been a while since I've asked for likes on a video, but this is kind of like an older series from Black Ops 3, so the more likes a video gets, the more support I get on it. So if you do enjoy this type of video, this type of series, and want to show me, the way to do so is hit that like button. But without further ado, this week we are talking about Outrider. Now, as far as Outrider goes, she is not one of the characters that is coming back in Black Ops 4, and there's a specific reason for that we are going to talk about later in this video when we find out a little bit more about Outrider. Speaking of which, let's go a little bit into Outrider's backstory. So as far as the very basic information for Outrider, her real name is Alessandra Le Castillo, and she is obviously a female. As far as her way back story, she was actually an orphan living on the streets of Rio de Janeiro. She grew up in the favelas there, and the interesting thing about this is nowhere in her bio does it say that she was adopted, fostered, anything like that. All it says is she grew up on the streets, so she may have been homeless from the day that she was orphaned. But it then goes on to explain that because she grew up in the favelas, she actually learned many of her skills because of this. For example, one of the things it says is she spent her spare time traversing rooftop to rooftop, watching the people moving in the streets below, noticing patterns and learning how to predict their movements. This kind of explains one of her abilities that we're going to talk about in a bit, Vision Pulse, that allows her to see people through walls, predict their movements, and see where they're going. It then goes on to explain that once she was older, upon turning 18, she joined the Brazilian army and later got placed in something called Bada Op Esp, which is basically the Brazilian Special Forces, and on top of that, the reason why she got selected for that was because of her agility, and on top of that, her superior observational skills. But we also know, this is not in her bio or her transmission, that she eventually joined the Winslow Accord because she was mentioned in one of Ruin's transmissions talking about the Winslow Accord.
Castillo and Rojas. Could have kissed him.
Last couple of CDP that tried to take refuge in the bunker with us fell to Spectre, who bugged out before Outrider and Nomad made it to us.
If you don't already know what the Winslow Accord is, it's basically a future division of the Black Ops division that we see in Black Ops 1 and 2, the division that Frank Woods is part of, and then later becomes the Winslow Accord because of the events that take place in Black Ops 3. Now, as far as Outrider's specialist weapon, she of course has Sparrow, which is a compound bow, but the specific part of it that's interesting is it's a compound bow requiring augmented strength to draw the actual bow. So her weapon itself isn't an augmentation, however, the augmentation, which is extra strength in her arms, allows her to use this special weapon, being the Sparrow. However, the thing that I found more interesting about Outrider is her specialist ability. This is, of course, Vision Pulse. It allows you to see enemies through walls. They show up as red. And what I assumed is that this was some sort of eyeball augmentation that was given to Outrider. However, upon reading the description, it doesn't really seem like that. Basically, it says, pulses of cover-penetrating sub-millimeter wavelength radiation reveal the location of Outrider's enemies. So it could be some sort of eyeball augmentation. However, it says that nowhere in there. Now, as far as Outrider's transmissions that you unlock from doing her challenges, they're really interesting. Outrider's transmission give you the backstory of how she actually became a member of the Brazilian army and eventually adopted to the Brazilian Special Forces. So this is the story. I'm going to interrupt after every transmission and kind of explain to you what we can take away from every single one of them.
Growing up on the streets of Favela da Rochina in the 40s was no joke. Gang violence everywhere. Children killing each other over the corners they sold drugs on. Among the street kids, 22 was considered old age. Most didn't make it that far. Me? I got lucky. I spotted that the gangs kept clear of an international mission that distributed food and medicine to the local residents. I used to hang out nearby, staying out of trouble. They noticed me, and soon I was helping out, guiding them through the streets to make deliveries. They took me in and gave me a pretty good education. Gave me the chance to make something of myself. Without them, I doubt I would have seen my 18th birthday.
So first thing to take away there, she talks about growing up on the streets in the 40s. She's of course talking about 2040s, not 1940s. Now when she talks about this, she says growing up on the streets, if you lived to be 22, you were doing pretty well. You've actually made it in life. A lot of people took that as she was 22 during the 1940s. That's actually not true. She was actually born January 8th, 2040. And if you didn't already know, Black Ops 4 actually takes place during 2045. That is why Outrider is not in Black Ops 4, because during the events of Black Ops 4, she is only 5 years old, which wouldn't make sense for her to be one of the characters in Black Ops 4. Which, by the way, means during Black Ops 3, she is only 25 years old at this time.
The mission was in the tallest building in the neighborhood. It was made of brick and was there well before the shanty town that grew up around it. From the roof, I could see for miles. Could watch the 500,000 residents of Roshina going about their lives in the streets below. I loved spending my evenings watching them move around, learning the patterns that ebb and flow in crowds, you know? I'd move across the rooftops, following people who caught my eye, predicting where they were headed and getting ahead of them before acquiring them again. I got good at finding my way around, too. I was fearless. Jumping from roof to roof without a thought I might screw up and fall into the streets below. I felt good up there, invincible even. That's when you relax. That's when you stop paying attention. And that's when you make mistakes.
Now, there's not really much to take out of that one, not really much you can learn about the character. The only thing is her assets, being agile on the roofs, jumping from roof to roof, stalking people, kind of explains where some of her abilities come from.
One night, I was following one of my targets across town. A bunch of rich city kids out in the favela looking for kicks. I lost them. I was so intent on finding them, I stopped paying attention to where I was. Ended up deep inside the territory of the most notorious drug gang in Roshina. Stupid. I saw a bunch of gangbangers on the street below, holding pistols on some rival kids that they had on their knees. Pop, pop, pop. They executed them right there. I must have made a sound. They looked up, saw me, started shouting. Man, I booked it out of there so fast as I could. I could hear them chasing me. I had to lose them, you know? I jumped roof to roof, bullets burning past me. I kept trying to keep cover between us. I was sure I was gonna die. Then it came to me, what I had to do if I wanted to live. I'd lost track of where I was. Maybe they'd do the same. With the gang hot on my heels, I led them across the rooftops before dropping down to street level, right in front of a UPP patrol, the riot cops they sent to keep favelas quiet. Stupid kids followed me and were instantly outgunned. Favela Policia, they don't take any chances. The cop who questioned me was ex-army. He was impressed with my agility and the initiative I'd shown. Asked me if I'd consider going into the military. I'd never given it a thought. Honestly, I didn't have any kind of plan for what I was gonna do with my life. So on my 18th birthday, armed with a letter of recommendation from the cop, I turned up at a recruitment office. His suspicions were right. The skills I'd learned on the rooftops of the favela got me selected for Spec Ops training. 10 years later, I'm Winslow Accord's Special Forces, currently serving alongside the ZDF in Zurich. Not bad for a kid from the streets, huh?
So that story is basically the description of how she became a member of the Brazilian army once she turned the age of 18. The police officer's letter of recommendation allowed her in, and then her agility, her abilities allowed her to directly join the special forces. And then from there, we find out that sometime in the next 10 years, she gets inducted into the Winslow Accord, which we talked about earlier, and then from there, she is working for the ZDF, which is the Zurich Defense Force, which kind of takes place within the Black Ops 3 campaign, but Alessandra Castillo, or Outrider, is not really part of that campaign story. She just kind of worked there for a part of her life. Now, as far as Outrider goes, there's many stones left unturned, questions left unanswered. The main one is, how did she go from being Brazilian Special Forces to getting inducted into the Winslow Accord? How did that happen? How did she get kind of headhunted? On top of that, we don't know how she became friends with Nomad, Battery, and Ruin, because, once again, she was brought into question in Ruin's transmissions. But the biggest thing I must say, as we know, one of the specialist characters in Black Ops 3 is the Spy. He's the character that got all of these soldiers together to fight in a simulation to prepare them for some upcoming war. As far as Outrider goes, I definitely don't think she is the Spy. Her backstory, the way she is introduced into the army, just don't sound like she would be inducted as a spy, even though she does have a kind of shady background growing up in the favela. Everything else doesn't really add up for her being the Spy. So as always, let me know as we go through these various stories, who do you think the Spy is? Did the story change your mind? Did you enjoy the video? Let me know what you think down in the comments. As I mentioned earlier, if you enjoyed the video, it would be very greatly appreciated if you could hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all my videos. This weekend, we have the Black Ops 4 beta coming out, so I'll be streaming that on Twitch, uploading some videos for you guys on YouTube, so stay tuned for that. But guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.
Outrider moving out.